The trucking industry has been detoxing since shipping rates and demand soared to record highs during the pandemic. The bankruptcy of trucking giant Yellow is just one example of the sector resetting itself. Will the road ahead get worse for trucking before it gets better? Let's bring in our next guest that follows all the data and the analytics in the transport and logistics market, FreightWaves CEO Craig Fuller. Craig, great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
And of course, we heard from UPS that demand in North America was less. Is flagging. We heard from Sealed Air, which sells the packaging for shipping. They warned on their year. And so, Craig, what are you seeing in the data so far?
Yeah, it's been a really difficult start for 2023. And this really extended what we saw in 22, is we really saw a collapse in the goods demand or the goods shipping and supply chains, largely related to inventories. It started out in retail and on the consumer side, and has really hit all parts of the freight economy. Manufacturing's down significantly. And what this is telling us is that really we're seeing the end of the COVID cycle, and we're seeing a much more cautious economy as it relates to goods demand.
Is this a normalization to pre-pandemic levels, or is this something beyond that in terms of the correction, if you can call it that?
Well, there is some normalization there, but I think the big challenge for the trucking industry specifically is that there's been a massive growth in capacity. If you go back and compare to where we were, say, 2019 or even 2018, you're looking at levels that are certainly above in terms of volume, in terms of freight demand. We're approximately 9 to 10% above where we were in those levels. And that doesn't sound so bad until you realize that we've added 25% more capacity in that time. So we've seen a massive build in capacity. This has been a exceptionally growth industry. It's an industry that offers a lot of opportunity and has no real barriers to entry. So a lot of folks saw the high rates in COVID, joined the industry, went out and bought a truck. And now we're just paying the price of massive expansion. And we're seeing in certain parts of the economy, particularly consumer discretionary, seems to be really struggling right now, whereas things like grocery is doing better generally. One of the interesting things that we saw in July and have continued to see play out in August is that things that are not really exposed to consumer, but more exposed to things like infrastructure related to the infrastructure bill and stuff around sort of building materials, actually looks like it's breaking out of some seasonal norms. And it's probably related to all the government stimulus that was put in for those programs over the last couple of years.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Craig. But, you know, with the bankruptcy of Yellow, you take what you estimate of 8 to 10% of them, you know, they had that much market share. So you remove that. And how much does that help the others? And what sort of freight did Yellow specialize in, or what sorts of trucks did they really have? And who has that sort of overlap with Yellow?
Yeah, so Yellow represent about 9% of the less than truckload. So this is, think of it as pallets. So think of parcel with UPS, the folks that show up at your house is really boxes. LTL is the pallets, and then truckload is a different part of the market. Yellow is about 9% of the LTL business. And one of the advantages of LTL is it isn't easy to replace that capacity. So removing 9% of the capacity out of the market really helps the other LTL players. Companies like XPO, FedEx, Saia, Old Dominion are going to do exceptionally well. ArcBest, which is one of the other large Teamsters trucking companies, actually is able to pick up a lot of market share because a lot of union manufacturers and warehouses prefer to do business with union carriers. And that really helps companies like ArcBest and Transforce.
It sounds like, though, you think that there still needs to be more consolidation in this industry, that more capacity needs to be taken off.
I think in the LTL industry, we're probably right-sized with the reduction of Yellow. But when we look at truckload, a market that's far more commoditized and is, you know, anywhere from 15 to 18 times the size, depending on how you estimate it, versus the LTL market, it has a lot of excess capacity, and we have to reduce a lot of that capacity. And the only way that's going to reduce, the only way we're going to see reductions of capacity really is companies will file for bankruptcy and leave the industry. So it's an unfortunate reality of a boom and bust cycle, but trucking, like other commodities, operates on the fundamentals of supply and demand. And unfortunately, we saw a massive increase in capacity in 2020 and 21 that we're still dealing with.